Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking into the story of Dammar Singh Saud. And I think anyone who is really interested in education, especially how technology can be used to improve access, is going to find his story really fascinating. We've got his biography to work from as well as some of his writing.
Oh, excellent.
Should give us a good overview of his work.
It's always great to get that firsthand perspective, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think what's going to stand out for our listeners is how much one person can really achieve.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Saud's story is a testament to that. The impact he's had on education in Nepal.
Right.
It's incredible. He really took his own experiences and turned them into a model for how to empower others.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to technology.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time in seeing how tech could level the playing field, especially in under-resourced communities.
Yeah.
And that's something we'll definitely dig into.
For sure. So let's start at the beginning. He was born in Himdat municipality in Nepal. And his father, Kashi Singh Saud, was a math teacher for over 30 years.
Wow. So that's a long time.
Yeah, and I think that commitment to education must have really influenced Dammar Singh Saud's path.
It makes you wonder, right? Like how much of that early exposure shaped his passion. Because you see it so often how those early influences, especially within a family, can spark a lifelong interest in a field like education.
It's fascinating. So Saud went to local government schools first, then a private school, which was a new experience for his family.
Interesting.
And he excelled academically. But then he did something I wasn't expecting. He went to India to study science.
Oh.
But then ended up coming back to Nepal to pursue humanities.
Now that's a twist. I wouldn't have predicted that.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, it's really interesting to see that kind of shift because, you think about career paths.
Right.
And, so many people feel pressured to stay on one track, even if it's not the right fit.
It's so important to be open to those changes, though, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's where you find your true calling.
Exactly. Like in his case, it suggests he was really listening to his own interests.
Yeah, definitely. And willing to make a change, even if it meant going against expectations.
Right. Especially because this was in Nepal where there's a big focus on STEM fields.
Oh, absolutely. Those were often seen as the more practical options.
Right. So for him to move towards humanities suggests a real commitment to his own path.
For sure. It's not like he was taking the easy way out.
No, not at all. And he ended up getting a bachelor's degree in English.
Okay, so that's where the language and literature really come into play.
Yeah, and he didn't stop there. He went on to get 2 master's degrees.
Wow. 2. That's impressive.
One in English literature and another in English language education, both from Triphuvan University.
So he really dove deep into the world of language teaching.
He did, and it's during his MPhil at Kathmandu University that things get really interesting.
Okay, what happened there?
His research focused on using ICT in language teaching.
ICT, Information and Communication Technology.
Yeah, exactly. So basically using technology in the classroom.
Wow, so he was already thinking about this back then. That's pretty forward-thinking.
He was. And it wasn't just theoretical stuff either. His findings really shaped how he taught.
So he was putting it into practice right away. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was. So what did his research tell him? What was his big takeaway about ICT's potential in language teaching?
Well, one of the key things he found was that technology could help bridge gaps in access to quality education.
That makes sense.
Especially in under-resourced areas.
Right.
He saw how ICT could give students and teachers tools and resources they wouldn't have otherwise.
And this was in the early 2000s, right?
Yes, way before online learning platforms and mobile devices were everywhere.
Wow, so he was really ahead of the curve.
He was. And it wasn't just about using technology for technology's sake. His research showed it had to enhance the learning experience.
So not just slapping a computer in the classroom and calling it a day?
Exactly.
Yeah.
He focused on how ICT could make learning more engaging, more interactive, and more personalized.
That's where I think things get really exciting for anyone involved in education.
Oh, I agree. Whether you're a teacher, a student, or even a parent.
Right. It's about understanding that technology is a tool, and how you use it is what matters.
Yeah, and Saud got that from the get-go.
Yeah.
He wasn't just interested in the tech itself.
Right.
He was fascinated by how it could change teaching for the better, the pedagogy of it all.
And he wasn't afraid to tackle more complex ideas either.
Like what?
Well, for example, he looked into something called translanguaging.
Translanguaging. That's a new one for me. What is that?
I have to admit, I had to look it up too. Basically, it's the idea that multilingual students use all of their language skills when learning.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of forcing them to stick to one language, you encourage them to use all their knowledge.
So like using their native language alongside the one they're learning?
Exactly. And Saud saw how technology could support that kind of learning.
That's pretty cool. It challenges the traditional way of thinking about language learning.
It does. It's like he was trying to break down barriers and make learning more inclusive.
And more dynamic, I bet.
Yeah, definitely. So that brings us to his teaching career, which started at Darchula Multiple Campus in 2009.
Okay.
Now, get this. He started as an assistant lecturer, and he was actually unsure about his teaching abilities at first.
Really? That's hard to believe considering all he's accomplished.
I know, right? But I guess everyone has moments of self-doubt, even the best educators.
True. But it's what you do with that doubt that matters.
And it sounds like Saud used it to fuel his growth as a teacher.
It seems like he was always looking for ways to improve and connect with his students better.
Exactly. He was always experimenting, innovating, asking his students for feedback.
Wow. So he was really dedicated to creating a positive learning environment.
He was. And it paid off. He got amazing feedback from both students and colleagues.
That must have been so validating.
It was. And it really solidified his belief in the power of education to make a difference.
It's inspiring to see that kind of dedication.
Well, it is. But teaching in rural Nepal back then must have been tough, especially when it came to technology.
Yeah, I was just thinking that were computers and the internet readily available?
And were people even open to using them in education?
Those are great questions. And that's where things get even more interesting as we look into how he overcame those challenges.
And how he became a true pioneer in educational technology in Nepal.
I can't wait to hear more about that.
Me too. But we'll have to save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm hooked.
Me too.
Okay, so we left off with Dammar Singh Saud starting his teaching career and facing those challenges in rural Nepal.
Right. Like, how do you even begin to integrate technology when access is limited and not everyone is on board?
Exactly. It's a huge hurdle. And I imagine there was some resistance to change, too.
Oh, definitely. People can be attached to traditional ways of doing things, especially in education.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So how did he navigate all of that?
Well, it sounds like he was really strategic about it. He didn't just come in and say, okay, everyone, we're using computers now.
Smart move. That rarely works.
No, it doesn't. Instead, he focused on showing how technology could actually solve problems they were already facing.
So, like, meeting them where they were at.
Exactly. And one of the biggest problems was a lack of resources, like up-to-date textbooks and learning materials.
That's a common issue, especially in rural areas.
It is. And that's where Saud saw an opportunity. He started using online resources and multimedia tools.
Okay, so like what specifically?
He brought in multimedia, smart boards, projectors, online educational videos, all kinds of things.
Wow, that must have been a big change for everyone.
It was, but he was careful about how he did it. He made sure the technology actually enhanced the learning experience.
So it wasn't just about being flashy or trendy, it had to have a purpose.
Right. He wanted to create interactive and engaging lessons that worked for different types of learners.
I'm picturing a classroom that's buzzing with activity, students working on projects, doing research online, making presentations.
Yeah, it's a far cry from the traditional image of a teacher lecturing at the front of the room.
It is. It sounds like he was really trying to shake things up.
He was. He wanted to create a learning environment that was dynamic and relevant to the world outside the classroom.
And he saw technology as a key part of that.
Exactly. And it's amazing to think he was doing all of this in the early 2000s.
Right, like way before online learning was mainstream.
Yeah, he was a true pioneer.
But it wasn't just about the students either. He recognized that teachers needed support too.
Oh, definitely.
He knew they had to be comfortable using the technology in order for it to be effective.
So he organized workshops, shared his knowledge with colleagues, and encouraged them to try new things in their own classrooms.
It sounds like he was a natural mentor.
He was. And his impact started to spread beyond his own school. He began presenting at conferences, publishing articles, getting involved in the wider conversation about educational technology. It's like his work was creating ripples.
It was. And we talked earlier about his research on translanguaging. Did he actually incorporate that into his teaching?
He did. He saw how technology could help multilingual students by giving them tools and resources that allowed them to use all of their language skills.
So he wasn't just focusing on English. He was encouraging them to use their native languages too.
Exactly. He wanted to create a more inclusive learning environment where everyone felt valued.
That's a powerful message. And it seems like everything he did was driven by this belief in the power of education.
It was. But he didn't stop at just implementing these ideas. He wanted to share them with others, too.
That makes sense. He wanted to spread the word and inspire other educators.
He did, and that led him to do more research and scholarship, focusing on the practical applications of technology in English language teaching.
So he was documenting his methods and analyzing their impact.
Exactly. He understood that research and practice go hand in hand.
And he wasn't just writing for academic journals either. He contributed to publications for a wider audience, like the NELTA LLT Forum.
So he wanted to reach teachers who were actually in the classrooms dealing with these challenges firsthand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was a real advocate for sharing knowledge and building a community of practice.
And his research went deep. He even did a study looking at the experiences of teachers using ICT in English classrooms.
Interesting. What did he find?
Well, he found that even though teachers saw the potential benefits of technology, they often struggled with putting it into practice.
I can imagine. There are so many factors at play.
Right? Things like access to technology, reliable internet connection training, and support.
And probably just feeling comfortable with new methods.
Exactly. And his research really helped to highlight those challenges, which is so important for making positive changes.
Like his work was influencing the entire educational ecosystem in Nepal.
It was. And he didn't just stick to research either. He wrote book reviews, reflective essays, insightful pieces for all kinds of educational publications.
It's clear that he was deeply passionate about education and wanted to make a real difference.
He did, and it makes you wonder how he managed to balance all of that with his personal life as a husband and father.
Right, because those roles come with their own demands.
They do. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect of his story, his ability to find balance and fulfillment in both his work and his personal life.
It's a tough one, right? Finding that balance between your career and everything else.
It is, and everyone's juggling different things, so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
No, definitely not. But from what I've read about Saud, his approach seems to be about creating a really supportive environment.
So not just at home, but in his work, too.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture where everyone can thrive.
And that makes sense considering his background in education, right?
It does. He's all about creating those positive learning environments.
Right. And it sounds like he's applied that same philosophy to his own life.
Yeah. He's spoken about how important his family's support has been.
Oh, I bet. They must be really proud of everything he's achieved.
And it seems like he's equally supportive of them.
Which is so important. It creates this kind of positive feedback loop, right?
Exactly. Everyone's lifting each other up.
And that reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the ripple effect.
Ah, yes. How his work impacts not just his students, but everyone around him.
It's like his passion for education and his positive approach to life just radiate outwards.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And when you think about the legacy he's building, it's not just about changing how English is taught in Nepal.
It's about inspiring a whole new generation of educators.
People who are passionate about innovation and technology and creating better learning experiences for all students.
And it's a reminder that anyone can make a difference, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he started in a small town in Nepal.
Right. And through hard work and dedication and a willingness to challenge the status quo.
He's become a leading voice in education.
Not just in Nepal, but globally.
It's really impressive. And I think his story highlights the importance of lifelong learning, too.
Oh, for sure. Not just for personal growth, but for making a positive impact on the world.
Exactly. He's a great example of that. He's always learning, always exploring, always pushing the boundaries.
And that's something we can all learn from.
Definitely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the life and work of Dammar Singh Saud, I'm left feeling incredibly inspired.
Me too. He's shown us that it's possible to achieve amazing things.
To make a real difference in the world.
And it all starts with a passion for learning and a commitment to making education accessible and engaging for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And it leaves us with a question to think about. How can we each contribute to this journey of innovation and transformation in education?
How can we use technology to create more equitable, more engaging, and more empowering learning experiences for all?
That's the challenge, and I think Saud's story gives us a roadmap for how to get there.
It does, and I hope our listeners will take that challenge to heart.
Me too.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Dammar Singh Saud's truly remarkable journey. We encourage you to learn more about his work and to find ways to apply his insights to your own journey of learning and growth.